Hey everyone, so today I want to answer another question that I received. This one is an important one, I think, and it comes from someone who's pretty young. So I'm going to just share the question. I'm 16 and I have minimal ideas on what I would like to do after high school. Is Coast Guard something worth looking into? If so, how do I get in and what would be my starting salary? Okay, for the first question, is the Coast Guard worth looking into? Full disclosure, this channel is all about me talking about the Coast Guard and my experience in the Coast Guard and trying to tell people why maybe they should think about joining. So I am clearly biased, all right? So take that with a grain of salt. But yes, I would say it's definitely worth looking into. The reason why I can say that, even though I don't know you, is because you're asking the question. If you're asking the question, that means you're thinking about it. That means there's something about it that draws your interest. So yeah, of course it's worth looking into and maybe talking to a recruiter, asking some questions and just finding out, with no pressure. You don't have to sign anything, but looking into it I think is definitely a good idea. You always want to keep your options open. The second part of it is, how do I get in and what would be my starting salary? Okay, so for salary, what I will do is I will post in the description a link to a site that shows you the salary for each rank, and it's also split up by how many years you've been in and at that rank. So time in grade and time in service and all that. So I'll provide that because it's a lot. I mean, there's about 24, 25 different ranks, and then it's all those change for each year you've been in. So I will post that below, but just to say that at the E1, E2 level, it's not a lot. It's small, but keep in mind that the part of the salary that's not represented in the salary that you see on that chart is your food allowance and your housing allowance. So they pay for your food and housing and your medical. You're not having to pay for medical insurance, dental, all that stuff. There's a lot of those side benefits that are, quite frankly, money. It's money in hand, because if you were in the civilian world, you would have to pay for all that. Your job would not cover those costs. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're calculating the salary. Now, how do you get in? The first thing you want to do is get a hold of a recruiter. Once you've gotten to that point that you want to start exploring the possibility. So, very first thing you want to do is probably doing what you're doing now, asking questions, reading things online, trying to find out sort of through word of mouth and social media as much as you can about what the Coast Guard is. So that's great. Assuming you got through that step and you wanted to kind of go towards the next step, then I would reach out to a recruiter and kind of give them your information, where you're from, what your goals are, have them tell you as much as they can about the different rates, and try to find something that you think you'd be interested in, and just ask all the questions that you can, and just try to get as much information as you can. And you can always come on here and leave a comment. So I have had people come back and tell me something that they heard from their recruiter that conflicted with something I said. And I can say that it's definitely possible that there will be times that a recruiter will have information better than what I had. But a lot of the times when that's happened, I've known that I was right. And that's based on knowing policy. And I have access to all the same information that recruiters have access to, being in the Coast Guard. So I can still verify a lot of things. And I'm not saying that a recruiter ever lies, but they have a quota, an incentive to get you in. And frankly, I'm not interested in trying to trick or induce anybody to join the Coast Guard. That's the last thing I would ever want to do, is have somebody join and then regret it and resent the people that encourage them to join. I want people to make an informed decision that's best for them. Anyway, saying all that to say, go to a recruiter, ask your questions, get as much information as you can, and if after all that you are still interested, then try to find out, well, first off, know what type of enlistment you want. Assuming you're trying to go enlisted and not officer, there's obviously the reserve and active side, and then there's also different programs within the reserve side that kind of will determine when and where you go to A school. So those are questions for your recruiter as well, finding out like how much time you'll have to wait for a certain A school. I do have videos on that as well, and I can give you that information too if you want to know wait times. But once you get to that point and you've determined, okay, yeah, I want to join, I want to go active duty, I want to be enlisted, whatever, then that's when you start making the big decisions, making the big signatures. So you'll have to fill out a form, like a consent form, to do a physical, and they check everything, every crevice, everything about you they're gonna check. So it's not the most fun, but it's part of the process. If you pass that, then you basically, I don't want to forget about the ASVAB. You have to take the ASVAB, and I have videos on that as well, how the ASVAB is scored and kind of how to study for that. Essentially, I look at the ASVAB as kind of the equivalent to a high school exit exam. It's very passable, and there's also specific ASVAB score requirements for different ratings. So just kind of, take that test and then see what your options are based on that test. And if one of the ratings that you're really interested in is within reach based on your score, then great. If it's not and you still want to go for it, you can always take the test again. So study up and try to take it again. So when you get through all that and you've made your big decisions, you've signed your important paperwork, you've taken the physical, you've taken the ASVAB, and you know that you're mentally and physically ready for this journey, then it starts. Then you sign the documents and take your oath, and you commit to a boot camp ship date. And sometimes that's kind of far in the future, but hopefully that'll start speeding up. The ironic thing is, with lower recruitment numbers, it actually makes it take longer sometimes to get into a class, simply because they've downsized personnel because they don't have enough recruits to substantiate having that many personnel. And so you get into this kind of vicious cycle where, a lack of participation breeds a more complicated or a more difficult time getting into a class. So anyway, that's kind of the general process. And it's a good question, and I hope that you are able to, get all the information you need to make an informed choice that's best for you. Anyway, that's a really good question. I hope that helps a little bit. I really like to try to respond to everybody that I can, and especially people that are young and trying to decide what they want to do with their lives. So just do what your mind and heart tells you is right, based on having as much information as you can. Please let me know if you have any further questions, and I'm always here for you. Take care.